Brazil and Cuban sugarcane by Alexis Espinosa. Sugarcane is part of the grass family Poaceae, and it yields the highest calorie per unit area of any plant. Sugarcane provides about 70% of the world's sugar. The Egyptians were the first to mill sugarcane using animal power and grindstones. The dispersal to the Americas is connected to the European colonization. Sugar is therefore associated with slave plantations and colonizations. By 1900, sugarcane production became the largest and most profitable industry. Sugarcane is a perennial grass. Its stalk contains the sucrose, which is processed into sugar. Sugarcane can reproduce both sexually and asexually. In commercial agriculture, asexual propagation is used via stem cuttings by hand. Sugarcane is also harvested by hand, making it a very labor-intensive crop. Sugarcane prefers tropical environments with high humidity, full sun, and moist soils. The life cycle can be completed up to 2 years depending on the environment. Here's an example of the labor that goes into harvesting sugarcane. You can see how tall the sugarcane is compared to the farm workers. It's true, Brazil produces the most sugarcane out of all countries. Brazil mainly produces ethanol and bagasse with the sugarcane production, and these are turned into an alternative form of energy. Agriculture is a very large industry in Brazil, making up 8% GDP and 1/4 of the workforce. Other crops that Brazil grows extensively includes coffee, soybeans, wheat, rice, corn, cacao, citrus, and beef. In Brazil, farmers apply few industrial fertilizers due to the innovative recycling of sugarcane waste. There's only 5% arable land, 1% permanent crops, 22% pastures, and 58% forest and woodlands. The rest of the land is used for other production methods. In Brazil, there are 2 regions of agriculture, the south and the northeast. The northeast is prone to drought and lacks well-distributed rainfall. This region is mainly occupied with subsistence farmers. However, it still has adequate infrastructure and sufficient capital for development. This region mainly produces tropical fruit and cacao, among other forest resources. The south has a semi-temperate climate and higher rainfall and more fertile soils. Due to this structure of agriculture throughout the country, the south has the better economy, while the northeast and center struggle. The central part of Brazil is not used for agriculture. In Brazil, there is severe land inequality. Less than 20% of the land is owned by small-scale farmers, which produce 80% of the nation's food for domestic consumption. The rest of the land is owned by men who are in political and economic power. The term used for them is latifundistas. This has caused many families to migrate to the city. However, nonprofits have taken action to promote farming education in schools throughout Brazil. One particular foundation is the Landless Workers Movement. Here's a photo of a protest in Brazil. In 2012, Brazil was granted a contract to manage a sugarcane mill in Cienfuegos, Cuba. Brazil will remodel the mills and provide machinery for harvest and transportation. However, it is illegal for them to own land in Cuba. At one point, Cuba was the world's largest exporter of sugar, producing 8 million tons in 1989, and provided more than 500,000 jobs in Cuba. Cuba was supported by the Soviet Union and at one time in 1991 produced 4 million tons in exchange for 10 million tons of petroleum and petroleum products. When the Soviet Union crashed, the sugar price fell and the mills in Cuba had to close. In 2011, Cuba still only accounted for less than 1% of sugarcane produced. Cuba is the largest Caribbean island and is even considered a microcontinent due to its diversity in soil, vegetation, and animals. Cuba has a wet season and a dry season. Crop diversification is extremely important for natural disasters and climate change, which have intensified due to greenhouse gases. This has increased expert advice and formal education. In 2008, Castro allowed private farmers and cooperatives to lease land and provide food to the state and sell leftovers directly to consumers. Still, more than 75% of the citizens living in cities, farms did not have access to vegetables. Also, farms did not have sufficient labor workers and could not produce enough food. The solution to this has become urban agriculture. In 2003, farmers had converted over 300,000 backyards into gardens. GMOs are currently illegal in Cuba. However, chemicals are not illegal and may be used upon request. Usually, chemicals are used when the foreign investors opt to use the chemicals. If not, no chemicals are used. Cuba has become an icon for organic agriculture due to their limited resources. Although these countries are not advanced as the US and Europe and other first world countries, these two countries still prove to be very efficient in their production methods. With the current demand for sustainable production methods, many possibilities are on the horizon for both countries, especially Cuba.